Awesome. Okay, Antonia, you can let people in and yeah,
Okay.
we'll start. Okay. Hello, everyone. Just waiting for like a few more people to join in, and then we'll start this like really amazing conversation. Um, thank you so much for joining on this Friday evening. I know you want to like wind down after work, so we're going to try not to take too much of your time, but I promise like after this session is going to be really worth your time. Um, so really happy to see you here. Let's just give 2 more minutes for people to join in and then we'll start officially. But welcome. You can put in like, your name, what you do as a marketer, why you're interested in this conversation. You can just drop them in the chats and then we get to like, know each other. But welcome, Indongi said, welcome, David. Welcome. I don't want to spoil anybody's name, so I'm just going to say the people's name in the room that I can pronounce. But it's so good to have you here. And thank you so much for joining. Just 1 more minute and then we would start talking. We'll start this completely. Okay. All right. Awesome. It's so good to have all of you here. So you may know or not, my name is Gift Aku. I'm one of the community managers here at Smarketers Hub. And Smarketers Hub is a community of smart marketers who are looking to build global marketing careers. Occasionally, we invite marketing experts who share their journeys with us and let us know how they've been able to get to international, like work with international companies, leading international teams, so that we can just follow that framework to also like form a path for our careers as well. And today joining us is none other than Lade Falobi, who we just had like an expert feature. And so if you've not seen that, totally check it out. I will put it on the link very soon, but check it out. She said like so much about like, how she got into like, her marketing journey. And I also let her introduce herself to talk more about like, how she got there. But, her journey was so amazing. One of the key things from like, her expertise is product teardowns, basically giving a detailed breakdown on like, just checking out like, features of a product that could be improved and giving recommendations on how to improve those features to the product teams. As you know, as a marketer, you're not going to be working in isolation. We're constantly working with customer support teams, product teams, everyone else to make sure that the organization is growing, and product teardowns are a very big part of that. So enough of my yakking. I'm going to give Lade to introduce herself and then we'll get this going. Okay, Lade, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Gift. Hi, everyone. So my name is Lade. I mean, I work in marketing is what I like to say in general, but my current title is General Manager, working on SaaS products at Early Node. I was working on a product called Release Log before. Now I'm working on a different product still within Early Node anyway. Then I write a newsletter called Marketing for Geeks. If you've read the article, you might already know this. I got into marketing around 2018, and unlike most people in marketing, I'm sort of doing what I studied, right? So I studied communication and language arts at university, and early on I decided I wanted to major in. At first, it was advertising and marketing, but then after like sort of working at an ad agency, I decided, no, I'm just going to do the marketing side of things and not do the whole ad agency route. Right. So, and a couple years ago, I think mid 2022, I moved into product marketing. And one of the things that really helped me, so from product marketing, the next title I had was product growth manager. And then after that, now it's general manager. So one of the things that sort of helped me with that is sort of developing a kind of product sense, right? So it means that like right now, I like to say I do marketing, but I also tend to do like a lot of products, right? So maybe not technically product management, right? But it means that like I have to have like a lot of product sense, and I tend to make like decisions that actually impact the product itself. And one of the things that helped me to build that product sense, and that also like helped me to, I guess, widen my net a little bit, and include like basically move from doing products, from moving content marketing to doing like product marketing and product growth, was doing product teardown. So it was like that whole practice was like helping me to develop my product sense, and it helped me realize, oh wait, yeah, there's actually like an intersection between marketing and products, right? And that's product marketing, of course, but like that intersection, right? So it was doing those teardowns that helped me to know that. And teardowns are really just like, I mean, they don't have to be for products, to be honest. So some people tear down ads, some people tear down like products, just like I do. Basically, you could tear down like anything, but it's really just like going through the experience of something and like literally being like super detailed, breaking everything down, and then finding issues that exist, but going through the experience as like a user. So it's not like I'm coming in as I'm testing the product. It's like, imagine that I'm a user using the product and I'm thinking aloud and telling you all of the thoughts in my head, and then I'm adding my product sense and marketing sense to like point out recommendations or places where something was missed basically in the flow. Yeah, so that's like a quick introduction into me and into, I guess, my experience with product teardowns.
Awesome. And you've already sort of like gone into this conversation because it's part of like, the first question I was going to ask you, but we're just going to like, dive right in. So the question, you've already talked about like, what the overview of a product teardown is. So what are like, the initial steps that you take when you're evaluating a product?
Okay, so I think the first thing is it really depends on the scope of what I want to tear down. So there have been tear downs I did where it's the entire product, right? Those are really my favorites, to be honest, where like I start from even before the experience you receive before you get into the product and going through all of the different features, the different screens, basically everything that is inside of the product. But then there's also somewhere it's like there's a particular, like there's a very specific thing that I want to tear down or that needs tearing down basically. And so that day is super focused. So first thing is really just understanding the scope of what exactly am I tearing down, so like what's the purpose, what exactly am I trying to get out of this tear down. I think the first thing for me is really just pulling up some kind of place where I can document things. Right. I don't the end result of my teardowns are typically like slides, but I don't do those slides while I'm going through while I'm going through the product, because that's going to be incredibly stressful to like take screenshots, go into the slide. Like, it's very stressful. So there's two ways for me. The first is like literally just open a Google Doc or just put like a notepad by the side and just jot things down. And it's really just so that you don't forget, because if you tell yourself that you remember, you probably wouldn't. Right? Like, so I've had times where like I would notice something, I'm like, oh yeah, like obviously this is super obvious. If I see the screenshot when I'm doing this slide, I'm going to remember what I thought. And I wouldn't remember what I thought basically. So that first process is just like having some kind of documentation. More recently, I've also added Loom into that documentation. So I don't share the Looms with the product team or engineering team, whatever it is in this case, just because the Loom will probably end up being long and there will be like a lot of fluff in there, whereas moments when I'm like talking to myself or rambling about something or trying to think through something. So it's not concise enough for me to want to share with somebody else, because I mean, if you send someone a long Loom, it's very possible that they watch the entire thing and it's not like super clear to them what are the outcomes, like what should they do next, like what are the key problems. But if you write it down and like they can actually see it and they don't have to watch 2-hour long videos to get it. So yeah, but so I still do those Looms, but it's for my own benefit, so that if later on there's something I can't remember what I thought at that particular moment, I can go back. Or even so sometimes in some products, there's like things that sort of like flash, so, right? So I could be using a product and there's like a notification that just sort of like flashes and disappears. And like I might not be able to like quickly take a screenshot of that before it disappears, or I might not be able to quickly like notice that basically, so I can go back and watch the loom and be like, oh yeah, this was what that notification said exactly. So yeah, so I sort of prepare that, have that down. So when I'm doing the full product, like a full scope, basically, I start from the experience before the product. So it's not just like, oh, I start from like just downloading the product. So I start from the first touch point, and that's where like marketing sort of comes in. So it's a product teardown, but it's not the product alone, basically. So it's like I pick a touch point. Again, depends on the scope. Like if it's that we're running ads at the moment, I might decide to start from an ad we're running just to see what that experience is like. And just by the way, you can do teardowns for your ads as well. Like an ad you yourself are running, if you happen to like come across it while you are, I don't know, doing something else, basically, like actually test what that experience is like and think through, like as a user, not as the marketer or creator, as a user, what were your thoughts as you were doing all of those things, right? Well, yeah, so I start from like before the product experience. So sometimes it's I just search the name of the product on Google and see what comes up. Part of the reason for that is also it's your users are not going to just like your product's not going to appear to them out of nowhere. There's like a touch point that led them to downloading your app or to visiting your website or whatever. And one important thing that I try to catch in product teardowns is whether messaging is consistent. So like sometimes you search something on Google and that's snippets that you see on Google search is telling you a different messaging than what you're seeing on the website. You leave the website, you get to the app store, you're seeing a different thing again. You download the app and you're seeing like a different thing again inside. So basically the messaging isn't concise, like it's not the same messaging across it. So that's one of the things I also try to test from. So I start from that pre-product experience. So I search on Google, go to the website, basically like go through the website like I would as a user. And then I document all of my thoughts. So if I'm doing a loom, like I'm thinking out loud, basically. So whatever I'm thinking at that particular moment, I'm saying it out loud, right? Because you want them to understand, whoever is watching, to understand how users feel when something is happening. So you're not just testing functionality here. Like it's not just about whether something is working. If it's about whether something is working, there's QA engineers to do all of that in your team probably. But it's about what your users are actually thinking as they're going through this experience and like how should I call it, their euphoria is like going up and down as you're going through it. uh yeah, so yeah, I basically just talk out loud, document all of my thoughts. I try to like pay attention to detail, so I look at everything. I might not include every single thing that I test out in the tear down, so if it's something that isn't really relevant, I might not include it. But I would test out everything. Like I'll go to settings, I would top up a wallet, if there's a way to invite somebody else, I'll basically do every single thing I possibly can, because you need to catch as many things as you can. And like, because you don't know how a user would use your product, you can guess how they would use it. So I just try to do as much as I can, basically. And then as I'm going through, I take screenshots of everything. So if it's on my phone, I'm taking screenshots on my phone. If it's on laptop, I'm taking screenshots on my laptop, right? And then once I have done all of that and I have all of my screenshots ready, I have my notes by the side, then I start with the slide. So I don't start with all of my slides. Like when you open the slide, the first page you probably see is like the top issues that exist with the product. But that's actually the second to the last thing that I actually do put in. So the first thing is really just put in all of the different screenshots, right? It's like sequentially the way they followed each other. So I put the screenshots and then I put like a box for me to put in my thoughts at that moment. It's also important. I don't do that anymore because the people who view my teardowns like already understand that I am doing the teardown from the perspective of a user. But when I first started, like it was important to like state, basically like make it clear that this is me going through the experience as a user. So I would use like it's important that I'm not just saying the feature doesn't work. Like I'm saying I experienced this thing and it made me feel like this, basically. So yeah, I go through the entire product. I break down. So after I've put in all of the different images, then I start to break down the slides into chapters for readability. And just by the way, like, practice makes perfect, to be honest. The first tear down I didn't have chapters, didn't have top issues, didn't have recommendations. So it's like the more I do, the more I realize, oh, I need to include this particular thing in there. So yeah, I break it down into chapters just to make it a lot more readable, because if you send someone a slide, I've done teardowns that are up to 100 pages long. I think the longest I've done was like 120 pages long. So like it's sort of scary when you send someone a slide, like you open a slide and you see 120 pages. So I break it down into chapters to also like make that reading experience a little easier. So it's like, oh, this is the website experience. This was the discovery part, like me just searching on Google, finding it on website or whatever. And then this is the sign up. This was the onboarding. This was me testing out the wallet feature. This was me testing out, basically like break it down like that, because it makes it a lot easier for people to then follow what you've written in there. And then after I've done all of the slides, then I can then list out the top issues. So it's like, after going through the experience, what were the lowest points for me in that experience? That's really like the thought in my head, because those are the most important things that you probably need to get done like pretty soon. So I list out the top, usually it's the top 5 issues that I experienced. And then basically I put all of that in the first slide then. And depending on the context of the tear down, I would then add in recommendations at the end. I'll talk more about what I mean by the context, but I would then add like a recommendation at the end, so like, for all of the issues I face, these are some of the things that I think can be done to fix it. So yeah, that's pretty much the process that I do. Also, depending on the context, sometimes I'm thinking about twice, I've done competitor tear downs as well. Right, so where it's like, I think I worked on Flutterwave at a point, not on the client side, but on the agency side. And so I did a teardown for Flutterwave, and I decided, okay, it's not just enough to show the problems they're experiencing. Like, I also did one for Paystack, basically. So I did like another one for Paystack. And for that one, my focus was then, how does Paystack, what points does Paystack win over Flutterwave within the entire flow that the user faces? And also, where does Flutterwave win over Paystack? So that's like a competitor teardown. So like I said, the context of the teardown determines what I include in it or what the focus of it is. So yeah, I was basically like testing, like, okay, you have a store feature, they also have a store feature. What is my experience like with both of them? So then I can then say, okay, yeah, so if these are the things Paystack is doing really well, that maybe you could leverage, like maybe you could steal some ideas from there, sort of. And then these are the things that you are doing better than them at, just so you also have an idea of your competitive advantage. So if someone is asking, like a customer is asking, why should I choose Flutterwave over Paystack? Like, you actually, because of this teardown, like because I have shown you what the experience is like for user at Paystack, you understand this is where you actually win on a feature level. So yeah, that's like pretty much the process I go through when doing a teardown.
That's really amazing. I feel like you already answered like maybe 3 more questions that I had, but it was really so detailed. And just like, just talking about like how I feel like this company should be paying you because you are doing such an amazing job to like, help them analyze where they could, just get better. Yeah, please. Yeah, this is like awesome. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat and then we'll get to them. We'll get to them like within this conversation. I can ask them like, because it's supposed to be an asking anything question. So if there's anything that pops in your mind, you can just ask them in the chat and we'll just get through them. But I would continue like, going through my questions. And I think what was interesting with what you said was how like, it doesn't just start from like the product itself. It starts from like the touch points, which could be like the website. I've never really thought about it that way, but that makes so much sense. Which leads me to my next question. So what are like common like product, sorry, why do you believe, sorry guys, I have been struggling with my eyesight the whole of this week. I've gotten some time for a leave next week, sorry guys. So what are some like some common product flaws or challenges that you see like marketers like often overlook and you think like this is a room for like marketers? Do you think what do you think that marketers are not, especially with like, the first touch points, like perspective?
Uh-huh.
What do you think marketers are overlooking that they should start fixing now?
So I'd say probably the biggest thing is not realizing that what you are saying in your marketing, the product might be saying a different thing. So like you've decided like this is the messaging you're using and you've spoken, you have this in your website, you have it everywhere. And then like after you do a teardown, you might find out that like what the product is telling users is different from what you've told them. And that's actually like a problem that can cause churn, right? Because so I did a teardown for pillow funds. Pillow funds is, and it's even confusing for me to say what they are because they had that problem. Like was one of the things I noted in their teardown. So when I searched pillow fund like on their, when I searched them, the search snippet, position it as like a crypto company, right? So get high returns on your crypto, right? And their website also pretty much said the same thing, get high returns on your crypto. But then I went to the App Store and the App Store called it a dollar savings app, right? So yeah, there was that like mismatch. Like, are you a crypto product or are you a dollar savings app? Technically, I get why they are sort of both, right? And then I go back to the app again, and then the app was saying crypto. On another place again, it said dollar. And the reason why that might cause churn is, so imagine somebody lands on their app, right? Somebody is looking for a dollar savings app, looking for like the equivalent of Rice Vest, right? So I search, I'm looking for something like Rice Vest where I can save in dollars. So I search dollar savings app. Now Pillow comes up. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is like what I'm looking for. And then I download the app, but I get there and I'm seeing crypto. And so I'm lost. Like, what's the match between I was looking for something like Rice Vest and now I'm seeing something where it is save crypto and earn returns, right? So there's like that mismatch. So
Mhm.
and the fact is they didn't catch it, right? So
Hmm.
like, and it's, to be honest, it happens, right? Like I've done tear downs for products I work on, and like I'm surprising myself and like kicking myself, like what, how did I miss this, basically, right? So the tear downs are very useful for you even catching mistakes that you have made or misalignment between you and the product team about which positioning you want to use. So I'll say like, yeah, that's one of the most common flaws I've seen, where the expectations that people have before coming into your product, like the expectations that have been set by marketing or by sales or by whatever, are then very different from the expectations that are being set by the product. Right. So like aligning that messaging and that experience is one of the core things that teardowns really help me do. I think a second thing, honestly, this one really depends. But a second thing is really just on onboarding. So onboarding is like a really important part of the product, and it's like it can be like a very big determinant if a person stays with your product and if they churn. Right. Now, depending on the company, to be honest, I've worked at places where onboarding was the duty of marketing, and I've worked at places where it's the job of product. Right. But I think like marketing should always be involved in onboarding to an extent, because again, when users are churning, is marketing, people always somehow will find a way to call, right? So that onboarding experience is something that I think in a lot of companies, the only insights that marketers have on onboarding is like the onboarding emails that you write, which also can be a problem, by the way. I think it was it Flutterwave that had that problem that I noticed in their teardown, where like the onboarding emails and the website said, oh, you can get this done by taking 1, 2, 3 steps. And then you get into the product and it's not 1, 2, 3 steps at all. Right. So like it's like a misalignment. And you as the marketing person think like you've done like an amazing job, right? With saying, yeah, like it is this easy, because that might even be what it was at a particular point. Like maybe at a point in Flutterwave's product journey, it was exactly those 3 steps, right? But then we're entering the product, and I'm saying like I have to do all of these different types of verification, and I'm like, this is not the creates in 5 minutes experience, basically, right? And this is not a shade to any company, because I've never done a teardown for a company and not seen an issue, including products I worked on and thought, oh yeah, I just worked on something fabulous, and then I'll do a teardown and realize that I've cooked beans somewhere in there. So So yeah, I think just I like the two things basically that I think the most marketing related things that I commonly see. So it's the pre-product experience and messaging not matching up with the in-product experience. And the second thing is just the onboarding people see as well, like whether it matches up with the expectations that have been set, or even just whether they are able to get to the value you've promised them that they would get as quickly as they expect to be able to get to it.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. So there are questions in the chat that I think that I want to ask them quickly before we get into like the other questions that I have. So David sent a message. He said good evening, Lade. My name is David Ochiama, a content marketer cooking with Ravens in Macau, a digital marketing in Abuja. So this question is, how do you convincingly pitch your services to foreign startups or firms in the pursuit of getting marketing roles with them? So basically, like, getting roles with international customers.
Okay. So I think so far I don't think I've pitched. No, I don't think I've successfully pitched. Let me not say I've not pitched. I don't think I've successfully pitched for a job before. I think I definitely did do some pitching at least twice in like the early days of my career to try to get a job. One led to like a vague promise of like, oh yeah, it sounds. He called me back. Nothing ever actually happened from there. So for me, typically I just go either I apply for the job, I am referred for the job. So my current role, for example, I was referred to it by an intern that worked with me at my last company. Right. So which also brings a point about like the argument about should you network up or should you network sideways. Like it wasn't a senior person that referred me. Like at my last company, which was Motherboard, it was part of the internship program. Then the internship program ended. He then came to work at Early Node, which is where I am working. And then, the CEO asked him, oh, by the way, we were thinking of I started as head of content there part-time head of content before I moved. And so, just asked, oh, do you know someone who can do this? And then he referred me. I had an interview, did like a quick test, and yeah, that was pretty much it. I didn't like do the whole application process. So honestly, I don't know if I can give good advice about pitching because I can't say I've successfully pitched. I think maybe the only advice I can give is in terms of my experience as being somebody who has been pitched to, because at Early Node we've been doing like a lot of hiring, right? So I would say as someone who has been pitched to, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, right? So for example, at Early Node, like we have like very, very standardized process. And I think you'll find that that's common with a lot of foreign companies where like the intentional ones have standard processes where even if you do pitch, the pitching gives you only a very tiny leg up, to be honest, right? So for example, at Early Node, like colleagues would often like we ask colleagues like, oh, we're hiring for this, by the way, refer someone. But them referring the person doesn't really mean the person would get the job. The person would still go through the entire application process that we usually go to. We don't even take a note that this person was referred, right? So I'll say sometimes it works, but most of the time, if they have like a standard process, pitching would only maybe get you into the door, like get you the opportunity to get an interview, but it wouldn't automatically get the job. So you still have to put in all of the work you would have put in if you're applying normally. You still have to put in that job. But also just in general, if you are pitching, like try to understand what they are looking for, right? So otherwise you send like a pitch that doesn't match up with what they're looking for at that particular point in time. So like if they're not actively hiring for a role, you can, for example, look at posts that have been made by people in the team before, right? About maybe struggles they were facing, and maybe there's something in there that you can step in and help with. Then that can be like you pitching, oh, by the way, if you need this, I can handle this or something like that. But yeah, in general, I don't think I have like very amazing advice on how to pitch to foreign startups because I myself haven't done it, or at least not successfully. But yeah, that's like general tip that I can give, I guess.
Thanks, Lade. I think this part actually reminds me of a part in your interview where we're talking about just like, building in public. And I think that's also like networking as well, but like, building in public also like just helps people to like, notice you. And it's
Yeah,
way easier if people are coming to you than pitching as well. But yeah, those pitching like tips are like super, super helpful. Um,
yeah.
we
Just
have
to
another,
add
okay.
to that, so part of the reason why building in public helps is it also makes you more discoverable. So, for example, where I work, whenever we want to hire for a new role, before we even, or even as we put out, sometimes we run ads, even like we run paid ads for hiring if it's like an important role to us, like willing to put budget to run ads for it. But while we're doing that, we literally create a Google Sheet, and somebody on the team, like we give someone on the team a list of criteria, like, okay, for this particular role, I know there's the job description, but these are like specific things. We're looking for someone who has XXX years of experience. We're looking for someone who has worked at this type of company. Right. So we give the person all of that criteria, and then they go and search on LinkedIn and create a list of people who fit that criteria. So even while we're running ads, there are people that we're also DMing on LinkedIn to say, oh, we're hiring for this role. You can apply. They will still go through the application process, but like for us to message them, it means we already see a sort of fit, which is different from you applying because you then have to prove a fit. But like if we already message you, we already know, like at least from what we see on LinkedIn, there's a bit of a match. So that gives you a little leg up. So yeah, like that's why building in public can also be helpful, because when we Google on LinkedIn, like it's all of those things basically that help people who have optimized their profiles, people who have posted about doing certain things and so on.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Lade. Like super insightful. So there's another question on the chat, which I think is really important because you've done like so many powerful teardowns, mentioned so many big names. So Udia is asking, hello Lade, are your teardowns voluntary or paid?
Okay, so I think I've only done one voluntary, which was the one I did on Afro Change, and that was because I mean I just felt pushed by the experience. So like if you've looked through the tear down, you probably already have an idea. But basically, it was an experience I had, and I was like ranting to someone about it. Like, oh, I think these people should have done this and that and that. And okay, rather than just talking this person's ear off, let me put all of this in a document and just like share it, right? But most of the other ones have been paid. The very first set of tear downs I did were I was working at a growth agency that serviced African startups. So when we first started doing the tear down, the first client we did it for loved it so much that we decided to make it part of like our standard flow. So before we even sign a deal with a client, like we use tear downs to seal the deal, sort of. So like when we're like we already sort of know that we're close to closing this client. So that's when I would then do a tear down of their products. But because we haven't closed them yet, I mean they've not paid us yet, we won't add recommendations into those tear downs. It will just be like we tore down your product, and yeah, so we'll just share that, and then we'll have like a call where yeah, so part of the things I do is I would get on a call with whoever the client is and actually like present the tear down and explain my thought processes for all of those things. And most of the companies I did tear downs for, we closed them. Yeah, I think the only one we didn't close, it was because they pulled out of Nigeria or something like that. So decided not to do Nigeria again. So it was like kind of like it came to close. So in that way, sort of it's voluntary for the agency. To me, it's paid because I'm still getting paid my salary for doing it. Then I think while I was at that job, I also did like a sort of side project for a friend, right? Paid, right? So I also did a tear down, and I included like a price for that tear down where it's like, okay, you're building this product. I am going to like review your UX. Obviously, I'm not going to do any product fixes for you, but I'm going to tear down your product and make recommendations. So that one was paid. Uh, I also do it at whatever company. So I worked at Motherboard. We did like a relaunch of our product, right? Like so, basically, we killed the old product and built the whole new thing from scratch. So I did tear downs for that as well. That was also paid because I'm getting salary. So yeah, so let's call that it's been paid. So yeah, most of them are paid. I think the only one that wasn't paid was the one I did for Afro change and say the one I did for that client that we didn't end up closing.
Yeah. I really, really love that. And what do you think about, just like to follow up on that, because I was just thinking about, what do you think about like doing it? I think it's a very good strategy to like do a tear down for a company that you want to work for. And then you want to like, be like in your
Yes,
marketing team. And, okay, these are some things that I've noticed about this. Yeah. And then my
yes,
ex.
I think 100% that would be super useful. I've never seen a product where a teardown wasn't useful for them. Like even if the product team is unhappy that you said things about their products, they are happy to get that feedback. So I've never seen a place where it did not at the minimum lead to them being grateful to you. Right. And of course at the maximum it can definitely, like, I'm working on the product right now. I would probably, like, if somebody did do a teardown and we had the capacity to hire, it would definitely be something that would make me think, oh yeah, we should choose this person, for example. So yes, it would be a great thing. And I think the kind of teardown you do should depend on the kind of role you're applying for. So I wouldn't recommend doing like a full product teardown if you're not going into a role that involves product a little, or that it's a senior marketing role. Right. So, for example, if you're applying for a job as a content marketer, I don't recommend you tearing down their products, because you've given them value, but you've given them value that does not match up with like the value of your role, sort of. Right. So, like, you're a content marketer, but then you tore down like their products, which is good for them. But maybe they are then thinking, oh, maybe we need a product manager, or maybe we need a product marketer to come on board. And then maybe you're a social media person, right? So there's like that mismatch. So if you are a social media person, maybe tear down their social media content. Like, what could have been improved there? What were you expecting to see in certain things? If it's content, tear down their blog, tear down their YouTube, like basically tear down something that is relevant to your experience. Because it actually was me tearing, it was when I started doing the tear downs that my then boss started trying to push me into product management, which I've been running from and I will continue running for forever. But yeah, so
Yeah.
because I did a product tear down, like, she was like, oh yeah, this is really good. You should be a product manager. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're here for. So yes.
Yeah. Always faithful to the marketing gods. Okay, so you said something, and then I have a question for that. Um, so basically, for marketers who want to like get more involved in like product development, so what advice will you give to them to build better relationship with like the product teams, like improving their CRMs? Because I'm sure that the product team, yes, they would like the feedback, but there is some way that you have to like structure it so that
Yeah.
they are not just marketing. Please leave us alone. So how do you
Once
like that?
the first tear down I did, my boss was asking me that, did these people vex me before? Because like I was brutally honest without thinking that like the person reading this tear down, like maybe the person reading the tear down is like a senior person, like maybe it's their founder or like a senior, their marketing lead or whatever. But the person they are going to send it to is going to be maybe their product manager or somebody in their like somebody in their marketing team or one of their engineers who is going to hear me say like this kind of things, right? So I think, yes, be very honest. All of my teardowns, I am very, very honest. But there's sort of like an art to the honesty. So an example of that is like, you don't say, I don't like this, or this experience was terrible. You say, this made me feel this way, and I expected it to be this way. I've said, so you basically said the same thing, but first is you've said it in like a way that isn't a direct attack on what has been built, but it is you sharing, it's just you sharing your experience, not you saying this was nonsense. Right. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is it also gives them something they can use. So if I tell you this onboarding experience was bad, that does nothing for you. That tells you nothing at all, other than making you feel terrible. But if I tell you it made me feel this way and I expected to see this, me telling you what I expected to see can give you an idea of, oh yeah, maybe I can rework this thing to do this thing instead, basically. I think that's like one of the first things. Um, yeah, and I think another thing is making the teardown sort of like a two-way street, especially if you're doing it in-house. So when I did the teardowns, so when I did the teardowns on the agency side, I didn't interact with anybody after. Right. So for example, I didn't speak to their engineering team or their product team. Apart from I just did this presentation for you people on the call. Like they didn't say come and talk to our product team, thankfully, because we are on the agency side, right? But when I've done teardowns in-house, like I'm talking to the developer straight, I'm talking to the product manager, like direct. So you can then make it a two-way street because they have context, they can provide context that could not have been provided earlier. So when I'm doing a tear down, I don't have any context on why you did certain things. Like maybe you know what I'm already saying. So like maybe you actually know that there's a problem with this flow, but maybe you guys had like limited time to launch the feature. And so your plan is let's launch it first and we'll fix it. I don't have any of that context when I'm doing a tear down. But when you're in-house, you actually do have that context. So first is understanding the context. If you are in a position where you can be involved from the start on what they're building basically. I think the best way to get that context is if you're a product marketer anyway. So if you have that context from the start, it helps. If you don't have that context, after your tear down, leave room for them to give that context. So for motherboard, for example, I did like a super long tear down, and like the engineering team was then saying, oh yeah, they didn't think of this, but also they were explaining like the reason this thing is like this is because there's like a technical limitation here. And it doesn't mean that it's not fixable. It just means maybe the way I propose for it to be fixed might not be best. Or maybe there's a way we can couch it a little bit, right? To just improve that experience. So like you need to let them explain things to you. Like let them say, okay, we did it this way because of this way, and then accept what they are saying, but also like then respond. Like don't just blindly accept because they said it's not possible. So I think that's one of the things I also did at Motherboard. So like it's not, I won't let the engineer tell me what you're saying is not possible. No, you must tell me why it's not possible. Because maybe indeed it's not possible, yeah. But maybe it's that it is not possible the way I said it is possible. But there's another way we could actually effect it that it would make sense. Right. So that's also one of the things. I think in general, marketing should not be disconnected from products. That's typically what the product marketing function is for anyway. But there should always be like some overlap between product and marketing. But sadly, like if you're an independent contributor, like if you're an IC, like just the mid-level person, you're not like the head of a team, it's unlikely that you'll be able to change that. Like at the end of the day, is the way the way the company set up the departments, that they've set up the department. The best you can do is like make recommendations, but you can't actually like enforce anything. But yeah, I think maybe just as much as possible, try to learn about the product decisions, maybe not in an official capacity, but you just maybe messaging the product manager, like, oh yeah, what are you guys working on? Or I mean, inputs could even just start from, it doesn't even have to be you knowing what they're building. It could be even, I think marketing should have a very heavy input in directing what product builds. Because ideally, marketing, especially product marketing, should be the voice of the customer, right? So at Motherboard, we had what we call like a voice, the VOC community, which was like the people who speak to customers the most. And that's like marketing, sales, customer success. And we had like a weekly call where all of us would come and like say what we've learned from like speaking with users, right? And then the product manager was also on that call. So it was like sales is coming to say, this is what people were saying on the call. Like someone was asking, can we have this feature? So tell me, can we actually have this feature? And customer success is coming and saying, like, people have been complaining about this certain thing this many times. Can we, rather than telling them, oh, do this to fix it, can we actually just improve that experience for them? So yeah, like try to, I guess, do that basically, like give input from what you are learning from interacting with the customer to the product team. So if you're doing social media, you might be seeing what people are saying in the comments, right? People are asking about a certain thing, or they're saying a certain problem they're facing. Maybe you have an idea and then you just mention it to the product team. Just like that, it means that by the time they launch that feature, you already have some context on it. So, and I think maybe an extra thing is just know that at the end of the day, not everything in your teardown will be implemented, especially not implemented right away. The product team also has like a roadmap. They have their own priorities and timelines. But it helps if you, that's why I always go with this made me feel this way. Like, so if I just tell you like, oh, this feature might cause a problem for users, it's different from if I tell you like, I use this product and it made me feel sad. And like, this made me feel frustrated that I had to go through this many screens to get to this thing that I wanted to go to. It helps them to like see the urgency of what you're saying. So like for them to see that it's not just me saying some nice to have things that you could improve. It is something that is actually urgent to how people are feeling. And that's why I also like do that top 5 mistakes. So I know that like maybe you might not fix all of the things that I said, but these top 5 are like really important because of the way they really made me feel. And they're likely to make customers feel that same way. And the final thing is just practice. Like the more product you evaluate, the better you would be at spotting any flaws or spotting strengths. It also helps you to build like that product sense if you're like looking at user reviews as well. So like look at, it doesn't have to be for your own product. So like I spend time going through like Aptera, G2, like all of these review sites to see what people are saying about product. And sometimes even products that I use, I see someone commenting and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a problem. I didn't even catch that that was a problem. So it sort of like trains your product sense a little bit. So basically just practice, like do the more teardowns you do, the better you'll be at it. That's pretty much it.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Lade. You mentioned some things on. I mean, we're going to be wrapping up soon. Even there are so many questions that I feel like I have for you, but we'll wrap up soon. And I know that we have like a small presentation to do. But I just want to quickly like just ask this question that Tara asked because you mentioned something about like just social media management, and we have like all types of like marketers in the room. So she asked like, hi Lade, can you give tips for improving social media engagement for a SaaS product that caters to developers? I feel like I could do better in speaking their language. So messaging pretty much.
Okay. I think maybe the first thing is I mean, at the end of the day, developers are just customers, just like everybody else. So you need to first start by understanding them a little bit. I found that there's content that developers resonate with that doesn't even necessarily speak jargon, right? So I use a product called TLDV, fantastic product. And I follow their TikTok. And they do like these memes, like these skits, sort of, where it's like interactions between products and developers and QA and all of that. They don't need to speak like a ton of jargon for people to relate, but they are relating to the experiences that these people are having on a day-to-day. And so they don't need to like say API 2 million times or like basically they don't need to say like jargon a lot, but it is clear that they understand the problem these people are facing on a day-to-day. I think one thing that would really help though is if you actually like speak to the people in your ICP, right? And try to embed yourself with them as much as possible. So for example, every single product I have ever worked on, I entered a community where my target audience were. So at Motherboard, our target audience were HR professionals, right? So I joined a lot of HR communities. I joined HR communities on Facebook. I joined them on LinkedIn, joined them on Slack, joined them on WhatsApp, joined them on Telegram. Like I just joined them because I wanted to see how people were speaking, like what were the things they were talking about, like what were the problems they were facing, what things did they laugh about, what things annoyed them, and so on. And it just gives you a better idea as to how to speak. So there's like a try hard way of speaking to a technical audience, and there's like a casual way. So for example, the way TLDV does it is super casual. Like it feels like, yeah, they understand this because they understand this. And then there's a forced way where it feels like they've gone to go and like research all of the possible jargon that exists and like put it in there to show you that, yeah, they actually understand you. So you don't need to do all of that, but you need to understand like at the core, what are the problems they're facing? What are you solving for them? How do they experience things? So I would advise like speak to a bunch of developers, try to join some developer communities, like see what they are laughing about, see what they are talking about. And of course, do actually try to understand the jargon as much as you can, because at the end of the day, yes, like using using the jargon isn't as important as understanding the jargon, because when you understand it, then you can use it in ways that feel normal and natural, right? So don't focus on knowing what the jargon is as much as you focus on understanding it. I hope that sort of helps. But because you specifically said social media engagement, I would really recommend you check out TLDV and check out Postal. Those are two products. TLDV targets remote sims in general, but their TikTok has like a lot of products versus engineering versus CS, really good inspiration. Postdoc is also an analytics tool that positions itself as being for engineers. So you can also check out like their content. I think they have like really good things where they don't need to mention a lot of jargon, but they are still doing like a really amazing job at interacting and really getting people to relate to them.
Awesome. Thank you. That was really well said. Thank you. Thank you. Oh yes. I'm going to get to like, there are some questions that have popped up as you were talking. But I'm going to get to them like, just shortly, like after I feel like you've done your presentation. But somebody just asked, Damilare just asked if you can spell out the recommended resources, please. I think you said
Yeah.
TLD. Okay, yes. So TLDV and Postal. So I'll get to your question, Damilare and Bala, very soon. We just want to like, do like a quick, because we're almost running out of time. We're almost running out of time, but like this conversation is so interesting. I just want to try and get everything in, as fast as we can. So if you can just do like a quick overview of like a public teardown that you've done to just like show how it's done, yeah, so that the team can learn. Right.
Okay. So I would wait on my screen. Okay, yeah. So I'll show the teardown that I did for AfriChange because I think it's the only fully public teardown I've done. Like all of the others have been for companies. So yeah, I mean I can technically show them, but they're not fully public. And also because I think it's the most marketing specific teardown that I have done. Maybe other one would be Pillow because I also like tore down their website and all of that. But yeah, so for AfriChange, this was directly based on like an experience I had in real time. So top issues, this was the last thing that I wrote. So I started by literally just my experience. So I went to Founders Connect, wasn't this year, so probably last year, right? And they had like these different games, brand sponsored games and price of 300K. Why not sign me up? So yeah, I went through that experience and then I faced some issues and I was like, yeah, I should probably document this. So just like the way I said I document things in my process, before I started this tear down, while I was there at the event on that day, I wrote down my experiences. And the minute I noticed that like this is an experience I want to document, I started taking screenshots. Yeah, then when I got home, I retook the experience with a different email to make sure I didn't miss out any screenshots. But yeah, so this is pretty much it. I use like super plain language and I'm speaking as a user, right? So I'm saying like you are literally see me saying like sign me up. Okay, so showing the process of installing the app. Let's go. All right. So this is me again saying that like I'm giving my opinions as I'm using the app, right? So for example, I haven't signed in yet and the app is already asking for permission to do certain things. And like, again, the touch point is really important here because they hadn't built enough trust to ask all of this because the touch point that brought me to this point was I was at an event, they're doing a giveaway. Who doesn't like giveaway? But what you should know is, of course, a user that comes from a giveaway has very little information other than they want to access the money or whatever you've promised them. All right. So, I came in and basically all of that trust hadn't been established. If it were a case where like maybe I've been following them for a bit, maybe they've done like some blog content or whatever, like enough for me to trust them. Maybe honestly, I don't think there's a context where like there would be enough trust where before I even sign up on an app, they're already asking for all of these permissions to access my contact, to access pictures and videos, especially without telling me why they need that access. So because of that, I did not allow access to all of these things, which by the way is a problem because for a lot of these apps, these things are critical for you to do KYC. But because they hadn't established that trust and they asked me early, they've already like cut off the points. they've basically cut off their experience for me. And then I would have to later go in the app and have to go through my settings to do this. Right. So But if they had waited till I was fully in the app and had more reason to trust them, like maybe I've gone through onboarding, or maybe they've shown me a screen saying, by the way, they need me. The reason they need me to take pictures and videos is for KYC. So why not ask me for that at the point of KYC where I know, yeah, I need to take a picture of my license, so I need you to get access to this, right? So yeah, there were 3 different access they requested. I didn't allow any of them. So it means that already, like I already feel like a lot of distrust with the app, and I haven't even signed up yet. Like I haven't created an account at all because of all of the requests that they've made from the start. So I follow the sign up process again. Like I'm literally just talking about the experience I have. Another good thing is talk about the things that they do well, just so that they're also getting feedback about things that basically they're getting right. Yeah. So again, now things like this would not, especially in a field like fintech, trust is extremely important. So you want to use your trust currency exactly the right way, and you want to build it. But with this particular product, like that currency, they had already lost it from the very first screens. So when they then came and were asking me for my home address down to my house number, like because they had caused that trust issue from the beginning, something that I would expect. I mean, it's a fintech app. I know they would ask for like a bank app. I know they would ask for my address, right? But because they had brought all of those trust issues, it made me wary. But I still provided it anyway because I was doing the test. I put in all of the things. Right, so there was the point of auto generation here where like I put in my address and automatically generated my city, my state, my postal code, which are really amazing. Like, let me just say that's like a really good feature. Like it reduces the amount of effort a person has to take during that process. But because of the lack of trust that they brought in, like, so because they already lowered my trust up to that level, like it just felt like a red flag. Something that should have been a green flag and an amazing user experience felt like a red flag instead, just because of all of the trust issues from the beginning. Then again, asking for my opinion, asking for my occupation, basically. And I'm starting to think, why do they need all of this personal information? What would have helped is if they'd given context as to why they need an occupation, right? Maybe telling me, oh, they only need this because regulators say they have to provide it, right? I understand. I mean, I understand the problem with regulatory bodies, but them just telling me like it's simply copy there, just saying we use this, regulation requires us to ask this, would have been perfect. At the house number point too, would have been perfect for them to just say we would never disclose this information with anybody. This is solely for documentation, would also have put me at ease. So yeah, I go through all of that experience. Again, the onboarding, for AfriChange, I was only reviewing the onboarding, and the onboarding was like super long. There was another stage again where I had to pick what I want to use the product for, and then a few more questions to go. Like after that, the next headline literally said a few more questions to go. So like I couldn't even see how many stages existed. I had to fill in my annual income, fill in whether I'm a public exposed person, my network, primary, like all of these are details that, especially considering how much trust they had lost going through this stage, I would definitely like be wary of. So in the real context, the first time I viewed this when I was at Founders Connect, I wanted to win my 300K. This was where I dropped off. And so the context here is if 300K was not enough for me to pass this stage, imagine a normal user that are not promising 300K. Like, would they not have abandoned this earlier, right? So that was why it was important for me to provide that context. Yeah. And oh, okay. So I think this is the wrong one. I'm so sorry. I think this is the wrong tier down because this is not the full one, which is sort of strange. So I mean, I just want to show the last slide, which was just the recommendations. All right, I think this should be the full one. So sorry for that, but let me just show the last slide because I know we're out of time. So basically, it was just me going through all of that experience. So because I wanted to show the full experience, after I left the event, I went back home and the giveaway was no longer the price. When I knew I wanted to do a full tear down, I started to re-sign up and actually go through the full process and then add in all of my extra thoughts right? And then this is when I finally got into the product, and this is making me feel like on a lot, like a few other things basically. And then I ended with recommendations for the product. And so basically it is things that, based on the way I felt through the process, things that they could have done to ease the process for me, basically, things that would have made me have more trust and so on. So like adding a progress bar, for example, so I know how many steps are left, because I kept getting tired whenever I would press next and there's another stage again and another stage again, right? And even like a suggestion of letting them know how long it usually takes people to complete those steps. So if they had literally just said, oh, most users complete this process in 5 minutes, that gives me an idea of, okay, yeah, like if people complete it in 5 minutes, I only need to spend 5 minutes. Then using like a checklist to make like those verification tasks clear. And basically, I just put like a bunch of suggestions that they could use. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the African teardown. I tried to keep to time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lade. That was like super, super like insightful. As you were sharing, like there was lots of like loves going up. So I'm sure everybody just like, really enjoyed that as well. I think that it's just really interesting how you sort of like approach it. And I think there's a lot of learnings. We are going to be like, sharing this like, tear down. You can find it like, in the article that we wrote for Lade in the chat session, in the chat section. We'll share it again. But we'll also like be giving like an overview to everything that we discussed like on this webinar, so like look out for that from us if you're in this room. So I'm just going to go in the questions that are currently in the chat. If you do have any questions, maybe just one or two, you can drop them, but I'm just going to ask the questions that's already here, then we'll just quickly wrap up. Okay, so this question is from Damilare. Hola, Cindy. Sorry, Damilare, for like butchering your name. He said, "Hello, Lade. What's the advantage of hosting your newsletter on Substack versus blog instead?"
Okay. So I think it's a few things. Major thing for me is the network effects that Substack brings. So for example, about 25% of my subscribers, I think I checked the stat yesterday, so I think it's about 25% of my subscribers in the last 90 days came solely because of Substack, like because of a feature by Substack, not because of anything, like not because people just discovered it naturally, but because Substack did something to push people to discover me. So Substack has features like recommendation, for example, which is where like another newsletter can recommend you to their subscribers. And then those subscribers, when they subscribe to that newsletter, like you're pushed into that flow. And for that, like I've gotten a ton of subscribers for myself and also for others. There's a particular newsletter that has gotten, because I can see the stats as well of how many subscribers they've gotten from it. Has gotten almost 400 subscribers from my newsletter just because I recommend them. Right. So that without Substack, they would never have gotten that before. So yeah, it's very helpful for a tool that would do all of the heavy lifting. If I was running a blog, I'd have to do a lot of work myself. Like, so Substack, for example, automatically puts in a pop-up when a new subscriber comes in, like a pop-up nudging them to subscribe, pop-up nudging them to share after subscribing, pop-up nudging them to follow you. Like, if I was building a blog myself, that's like a lot of effort and a lot of money I'll probably have spent as well on like tools to help me to do that. So yeah, like short answer is really just the network effect of Substack. And if you're using a Substack domain as well, it helps with SEO because Substack by itself already has like good domain authority. I think about when I was using a Substack domain, my authority was about 80 something or 90. And I bought a custom domain and now I've had to build my authority from zero up again, like because I no longer have like the Substack domain helping. So I think, yeah, I had to bring it up from zero. I'm currently at 8. So yeah, Substack basically helped with that, and I have to build all of my SEO efforts from scratch. So that's pretty much the advantage for me.
Awesome. Larry, I hope that answers your question. I feel like it's so insightful. I didn't even know that Substack does that. I'm just going to move my Medium blogs there. Okay, the next question is also from Dan Larry. Also, as someone who with more seniority in your career, what are the top mistakes you see early stage marketers make? This is very broad, but maybe we can narrow it.
Okay, top mistakes. Okay, I think maybe one. Then, so to be honest, a lot of things. Maybe I should put like a disclaimer: mistakes are normal, and a lot of things are not mistakes per se. They're like features. Like so, there is this idea of it's not a bug; it's a feature, right? So where it's like it is a canon moment. You just have to go through it, right? So, but yeah, I think maybe a few things. First would be focusing, like trying too much to network up that you forget to like network sideways, sort of like with the people on your level, because those people are like going to be your squad. So like while you're petitioning somebody more senior, you have to like be following them and feel like you're disturbing them and feel like you're basically asking too much and hoping that they actually do respond. Somebody, a colleague in a different company, might actually have an experience that might be useful for you. So, like, it's not that you shouldn't network up. Like, networking up got me, like it has got to me a job before. So, I'm not saying don't network up, but also, like, don't neglect the work of connecting with people on the same stage as you, because you are then going to be the next generation of, like, the senior talents, basically. So like if you're asking somebody to mentor you and be sending them messages and they're not really answering you well enough, it's fine. Carry some of your friends, create a group chat and mentor each other, like ask questions on that group to each other and like figure things out yourself, basically, would be like one thing. And even on the mentoring thing, I think maybe a broad mistake with mentoring is when people just like message someone and like it's like basically message someone to just say, "Can you mentor me?" Which, like I said, it's not a mistake, it's a feature, it's not a bug. So like it's not a mistake per se, but what I've learned is that like you have to teach someone how to mentor you. So I actually wrote an article about this like this week on like lessons learned from I have been both an official and unofficial mentee. So like I I didn't get mentored officially until this year actually, surprisingly, but like unofficial mentorship, and I have also been someone who has mentored other people. So from what I've learned from there is you kind of have to teach a mentor how to mentor you because they don't have any context of where you're coming from. So if you just come and you're like mentor me, you're putting way too much burden on them to figure out what you need to know, like what to tell you that will be useful for you, what will be helpful. So you need to like guide them sort of in mentoring you, but like providing that context of already coming with questions, right? So like, okay, yeah. Or saying, okay, you know what, I've done this particular thing. Could you look at it and like sort of let me know what you think? That could be like the start of the mentorship before you then start to like do more official, whatever. But it could literally just be give me opinion on this particular thing that I've done, please, or whatever. It could be just I have this question, like I have this problem I'm facing at work. Can I get help on it? So that gives them a better reference point for them to be able to like help you than when you just broadly say like, oh, can you mentor me? Because when you say can you mentor me, like they have to then start doing the mental calculation of what would they even tell you, like what would be helpful for you. So you need to teach them what would be helpful for you, sort of.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. And the very, very last question. The very, very last question is from Bala, and she or he or they are asking how hi Lade, for products that require payment at some point, probably subscription before usage or having to make payment to purchase items or services. Do you go as far as paying, or those features are skipped in the tear down process? Very
Yes.
important.
So I mean, it depends on how much help I get from wherever I'm doing the tear down from. So, for example, with was it the first tear down I did, they sort of gave me like a dummy account, right? Where like I could, in quote, add money without adding money, right? So I didn't need to like so yeah, there's some that would give you like dummy details where you can get money without getting money or whatever. But for a bunch of them, yeah, I put my money in there, just like very little anyway. So with Pillow Finance, for example, Like I think I bought 1K of USDT. I don't know where it is now, but like I actually did like get it because like I figured, I mean it's 1K, it's sort of what's the trade-off of me of us potentially landing these clients or whatever. So yes, I do it. You can typically just do like a small amount, and if it is a solicited tear down, they probably would help you if you ask. So like if I'd asked Pillow, that can you guys give me like a test account, they probably would have given me one, but I just didn't bother to ask because I felt like, I mean, it's still my account. I can probably still get the money back if I want to get it back from the account. So yeah, with Pillow, I actually did use my own money. I think with Flutterwave as well. I created a store for myself. I bought the money, but I bought something from the store by myself for myself and collected my money by myself for myself. So like at the end of the day, there's no product that would like lock your money that you'll never be able to get it unless it's like a really terrible product. At some point, even if it's a savings app, it will share its maturity at some point and you'll be able to get your money back. So
Right, awesome. Thank you very, very much, Lade. Thank you very much, everyone, for like your question. This has been like super insightful. Lade, before we like go and just like wrap this up, do you have like any last words? Like you just feel like you want to tell to this group of people before we go?
last words. I think maybe one thing that has also helped me that maybe I didn't fixate enough on the article is, so in the article I sort of mentioned that like I worked at companies that like skyrocketed my growth, right? And somebody made a point on LinkedIn that like, those kind of companies, like it's great, but like there's a negative side, like there's that toxicity and feeling burnt out. And no more, it's so true, right? So it's a part like I didn't mention that like, yes, it's in the type of companies that will skyrocket your growth at the early stage might also kill your mental health, right? So there was like me giving away something to get something. But the important thing is I was doing it for me. I wasn't doing it for them, right? So like whenever I was faced with like any toxicity and like I feel like stressed out, basically, it's reminding myself like this is not for them, right? And that's why when I do things like starting the newsletter, it is for me. I think there was a company I worked at where, my boss even sort of brought up the newsletter and said like I should create that kind of content for them. But at the end of the day, like I was not doing it for them, I was doing it for me. So like that's why I created it for me. Right. So it's really like deciding what you're willing to trade off. And honestly, everybody has their own breaking point. So determine it by yourself. Don't let anybody tell you quit your job or stay at this job for longer. Like they're not going to do the job with you and they're not going to job hunt with you, whichever one you choose. So if you decide to stay because you've thought it through and decided like it is worth it for you personally, basically. Right. So I've stayed long at companies that weren't the best for my mental health, to put it lightly. But it was because like I was working on things that I knew that like these things would look really good on my resume and on my portfolio, or because I was doing things that like this is an experience like I really, really want to get, right? So like I know this is something I want to do in XXX years time. And if I leave this company now, I probably might not have like the experience I need for me to do that thing I want to do in the future. Right. So it is like you making a decision by yourself about when it is worth it for you. And you would also get to a point where you have to be honest with yourself and say when it is no longer benefiting you. So you have to like weigh the pros and cons. And they will always get a point where the cons would start outweighing the pros, right? Where like maybe you've gotten enough experience that like, I mean, sure, you could probably still get some more, but you've gotten enough experience that you can use that experience in the next company and upskill yourself by yourself without the company needing to be the ones skyrocketing your growth, right? So yeah, basically, you need to be able to make that decision for yourself about does it make sense for me to keep staying here, right? Or am I at my breaking point where the cons could literally just be your own mental health. Like everybody has their own threshold, right? There's people who can take beatings for longer, and there's people who cannot take a lot. That's fine, like valid, whichever one you are. So yeah, just be very honest with yourself and do what actually does work for you and prioritize your career over whatever company you're working at. Because if you leave, that like their life will continue. Nothing is going to stop for them. If you enter accident today, they will continue work. Maybe they'll do like a few minutes silence for you. So so yeah, like at the end of the day, prioritize yourself. So if by chance the company's goal at that particular moment aligns with your own personal goal, beautiful, stick with it. The minute it stops aligning for you, like it's time to port basically. So I'll say that's pretty much it.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Lade. I think that one of the things that I just love about talking to you is that you are just like really, really passionate about marketing and just like how you just like really dive into, and it's just really so inspiring. I feel like I love my job a little bit more anytime I talk to you. So thank you so much for this. And this has been like really, really insightful. Thank you very much everyone for joining. And we're going to share the resources from this conversation, so just look out for it, and I hope that you've learned a lot. If you want to share any of your learnings, put it on social media and then tag us, and then we'll repost it. And yeah, have a lovely evening everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Graves. Thanks, everyone.
Bye everyone. Are you the last person to go? Bye everyone. Bye. Bye. Thank you for joining.